This is an open letter from the Lebanese people to the international community. The people of Lebanon are suffering amidst a tragic breakdown of the Lebanese state brought about by the same corrupt regime that has been in power for the past 3 decades, and which it appears once again is being given a chance to take over the reins of what little remains of the Lebanese state. After precipitous socioeconomic deterioration followed by the massive explosion that destroyed half of our capital city, Beirut, killing droves of our fellow citizens, after the misappropriation of the assets of the entire financial sector, and after a complete medical bungling of the corona crisis, the Lebanese political establishment has repeatedly shown itself to its people and the world at large as failing to meet the most basic of its citizens' needs. With the currency now devalued by almost 90%, Lebanon, which until recently was considered among the mid-tier of human development nations, all of a sudden finds itself towards the bottom and on the verge of a humanitarian crisis. Poverty is rampant, and the people can now barely afford food and medicine. The Lebanese state, robbed, mismanaged, and hollowed out by the political regime, has been left with no means to support its people. And yet, we now see that the same regime, led by the same cast of characters, is about to remake itself, delusionally coming forth as the saviors. A government is being formed by pretty much those who brought about the destruction of the Lebanese state. Let us be perfectly clear. The Lebanese people, from the north to the south, east to the west, categorically reject the governments being formed by this regime. We, the Lebanese, have not forgotten that those proposed to head the cabinet were in power when all the corruption was happening and did nothing to stop it. They were in power when all of this economic mess started and they did nothing to reverse it. And they were in power when the ship of death carrying the ammonium nitrates was docked in the Beirut port for several years and they did nothing to protect the innocent people. Are we, the Lebanese people, now to forget all their successive governments' incompetence, failures, and corruption and treat them as saviors? Better yet, is the international community willing to forget the billions that have been wasted and stolen under their previous premierships and entrust them with the custodianship of direly needed relief for the Lebanese people and the economy? After our life earnings have been embezzled from the banks, we, the Lebanese people, refuse to entrust this cabinet or anyone in this regime with a dime. If the international community wishes to deal with this regime, that would be the international community's prerogative, but we, the Lebanese people, refuse to be held responsible or to pay back any newly assumed liabilities by this regime or recognize any agreements signed between this government on our behalf. For those in the international community who choose to patronize the Lebanese protesters demanding their rights, by deciding instead to deal with the corrupt regime under the guise of realpolitik, to them we say, you do it at your own peril. If you wish to waste your own people's hard-earned resources, we would like to have nothing to do with it. Instead, we, the Lebanese people, are clear in our demands. We wish an independent government not formed by any previous regime office holders. We want an independent government not focused purely on alleviating the socioeconomic situation and on organizing the upcoming elections. We want nothing more but nothing less. We are confident that once fair elections are held, none of these failed regime politicians will see another day in office in their lifetimes. Until then, we don't recognize their legitimacy, and quite frankly, neither would anyone in the international community had they ruled over your own respective nations in the way that they have ruled over ours. The Lebanese people in the past century have helped other neighboring nations in their hour of need time and again. what we are asking now is for the international community to help us. Will you help us get our country back? Will you help us put a stop to the abuse that we and others have had to endure from this murderous regime? Will you help us get back on track to start rebuilding a new Lebanon, establishing a modern state based on a Bill of Rights that meets the people's hopes and aspirations and assures their rights? Will you help us, as we once helped the world get over its own conflict by drafting the UN Charter and that of the Declaration of Human Rights? If you believe in the new Lebanon that we believe in, which puts its sad past behind, then let's work together. Start by rejecting this new government or any other that this corrupt and murderous regime is forming. And instead, let's demand an independent government focused on solving the Lebanese people's immediate humanitarian needs and on preparing immediately for the next parliamentary elections. Thank you.